Greetings folks, you're about to watch a very unique review as somebody who has had this unit in their possession for nearly 4 weeks and has a clear understanding to whom this laptop is for, as it does everything well above average. While it's not your benchmarking king, it was never designed to be. Thin and light, jack of all trades, if you will, type laptop. So stay tuned from here all the way to the end as I sum this up and enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, meet the improved Aero 15X9. Check the links in the description below periodically, as Gigabyte has been working very hard to update and revamp their SKUs to include the i9, dual channel RAM, Ultra HD panels, various things like that to meet the needs of the various demographics across the globe. This generation, Gigabyte is using what they're calling all Intel inside, which means the NVMe drives, the network interface cards, Thunderbolt, all of that stuff. They're making a stand, and this is going to be a very nice standard for consistency as a consumer. The unit we have here comes in at around $23.99. All Aeros now have Windows 10 Pro. Our unit here has the i7-8750H, the RTX 2070 Max-Q, of course this has the NVIDIA Optimus switchable graphics technology. The RAM inside, they will be using Samsung from here on out, 2666. We're running dual channel today. We also have a huge storage upgrade, 1 terabyte NVMe from the Intel 760p. Read-writes on that came out after 9 runs, averaging 2800, 1500 respectively, as well as an empty available slot that will feature NVMe or SATA. The network interface card is the best you can currently get right now using the Intel 9560, and should you desire it, you can use the killer 1550 software suite. The battery inside is using that legendary 94 watt-hour battery. It is what really gravitated people to this chassis previously. Unplugged, 5 to 7 hours, no problem there. The power supply has been upgraded, previously using a 180 watt brick. We are now using a 230 watt brick. This chassis is not starving for power, and during any sort of load, it will never discharge itself. Additionally, the heatsink has been improved in these 2 places here, and there's also a slight heatsink over the PCH. The weight of the chassis comes in at around 4.4 pounds, and of course the build is all aluminum. Moving over to the I/O, on the left-hand side we have the local area network port, a single USB 3.1, an HDMI, the combo USB-C 3.1 and DisplayPort 1.4, and of course the combo headphone microphone jack. On the rear there's no ports. Very clean aesthetic here. Some may like this, some may not. On the right-hand side, though, we have the card reader, the UHS-2, very fast SD card reader, the fastest you can get right now. We have a 4-lane Thunderbolt 3 port, 2 USB 3.1s, and of course your power and lock. The bottom of the chassis is all aluminum. You can see the ventilation here. Now, some have reported hot temperatures when placing this laptop on their lap. And with an aluminum bottom panel, this is a very likely scenario. Now they could just as easily use a plastic or some sort of polycarbonate material, but the question is, would that sort of compromise the overall build quality of the unit to the consumer? Let me know in the comments below. The laptop opens up with one hand effortlessly, and inside, here it is, a Windows Precision trackpad. Thank you very much here, Gigabyte. Zero complaints with this trackpad. It's smooth as glass, it feels great, has good click symmetry on the left and right hand sides, gestures perfect. This is all I want out of a trackpad. Don't change a thing here. The keyboard feels just like it did last year. I particularly love the layout here. Maxing out the fans is the function key and escape key, and it works exactly as it should. However, users, keep in mind, putting this machine to sleep with the function key and F1 key may interfere with you maxing out the fans. The keyboard deck itself is very sturdy. It doesn't flex when being moved or grabbed by the corner of the chassis. When gaming in your left hand near the WASD keys, temperatures of the keyboard hit around 31 degrees Celsius. I find this to be beyond acceptable, and it's only when you start to get temperatures up near 40 degrees Celsius does it typically become a bothersome for the general user. Over towards the middle and right hand side of the keyboard can get quite a bit warmer when gaming, however that's typically not a placement for your hand during games. There's no Windows Hello on the Aero, and why it's not something I typically use is I have my machine auto login for me. With it being such a fine balance between gaming and a professional type unit, having a Windows Hello could be very beneficial to many users out there. So perhaps having a fingerprint reader integrated into the power button or even an IR camera would do wonders, perhaps in the future generations of this particular chassis. Now between the webcam microphone area and the power button, where that hinge is, that whole area is an exhaust. So that means using your Aero as a docking station with the lid closed, powering another monitor might not be the best solution for you. It's an interesting trade-off here, because asking Gigabyte to change this is just going to change the aesthetic of the backside of the laptop, making it a little bit more gamery by having visible exhaust ports. Just something to consider and keep in mind, please. And now on to that webcam and microphone. The built-in microphone and 720p webcam look and sound like this. Of course, with it being located at the bottom, I'm staring at the screen as I normally would, so those on the other end would be looking up like this. Now, if you're going to have a conversation like so, not that big of a deal. If you need to type and look at the same time, this is what it would look like and sound like as the keyboard is relatively quiet. And this time within the software, since we have a lot better fan control, you don't have to worry about the fan spooling up. And in case you want to annoy the person on the other end, have at it. To further improve consistency, Gigabyte is offering two display options. All of the Full HD 144Hz panels are from LG, part number LGD05C0. Last generation we have a combination of this panel as well as another one from AUO. And of course the Ultra HD display, which is a little bit brighter and has near 100% Adobe RGB coverage. On this particular model we do have that Full HD 144Hz display. Post-color calibration comes in at around 97% standard RGB, 68% NTSC, and 74% Adobe RGB. Brightness just over 300 nits. All 6 sections of the Gigabyte proprietary software is lumped into one app called the Gigabyte Control Center. The smart dashboard just has a little bit of the user interface stuff there, very basic, but most software feature sets that are proprietary to an individual laptop will feature something like this. Of course, you can have your app shortcuts should you desire making those. Your device manager, do not disturb, NVIDIA control panel, on-screen display switch, mute, brightness, yada yada yada, Bluetooth, all of those things that you can normally do inside of your Windows user interface. And of course, should you desire a different color gamut or selecting something from the Pantone display color calibration, which by the way is very crisp from the factory, you may do so. The Fusion RGB, very simple, very intuitive. This is more streamlined than ever. It reacts very quickly. Gigabyte, very nice job here, very clean. Moving forward, I would really like to see this level maintained. It doesn't really need any tweaking. The device settings. Okay, now we have full-blown fan control. Not every game is going to benefit from this, and you'll see why later on in the video, and just running max fans would be ideal. However, this is more than a gaming machine, way more than a gaming machine, and I think giving the opportunity for the consumer to individually take control of their fan curve based on their needs is super ideal. This works. I love it. Thank you, Gigabyte. Now the Smart Utility, I've always been a fan of this app. Only a few companies utilize stuff like this. I would like to see it more as long as it is maintained on the software side from that company. And just being able to see the driver version that you're currently rocking, then the official driver in the middle, and the latest and greatest driver on the right-hand side, as a lot of times this software is designed to ping various things beyond the official support page. And this is just a neat way to keep your system up to date, and it's an all-in-one functioning solution. Having used this laptop now for 4 weeks, I have had 0 blue screens, no hitching, no hiccups, nothing. This software is so dialed in. At this point, we have had 2 updates to the Azure Cloud AI, 3 updates to the BIOS. Gigabyte is very much servicing these things. They're not messing around here. Alright, so before we get started, Gigabyte has something set up with Microsoft called their Azure Cloud AI. And what this is essentially going to do is monitor what you have going on with your system, tweak accordingly. Now, throughout the course of this whole entire review today, this AI was disabled. Right now, we need more information sent to their database in order for it to really stretch its legs and show what it's capable of. So for consistency's sake, I did toggle that off for everything that you see today. Down the road, hopefully soon, we can revisit this and show how the benefits will be for the user who just wants a plug-and-play laptop, as I am confident over time it will deliver. But for the sake of simplicity and transparency, in this video, AI is turned off. Proceed. Alright, finally, now on to performance of thermals, frame rates, and fan acoustics using the current BIOS FB06 and an ambient temperature of 71 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, GPU-Z reveals the temperature limit of the 2070 Max-Q to be 87 degrees Celsius, and that too is the factory spec from NVIDIA. Now keep in mind, the Max-Q 2070 is going to pull somewhere between that 80 to 90 watt mark. The most I was able to get out of this was around 87.3, and the desktop variant is actually a 175 watt part. Because of that, in all of the game clips you're about to see, you will notice that there is power limit throttling. Since the desktop variant of the 2070 is a 175 watt part, the Max-Q is half of that. We are always going to be power limit throttled. Think of it as a feature. The laptop is just doing its job. There's nothing wrong here, but as a consumer, I wanted you to be aware of what this could look like should you decide to tick that box and monitor this type of stuff on your own. Wattage on the CPU is very well dialed in right now with this BIOS. You rarely see it exceed 55 watts, and on average it's going to pull around 35 to 45 watts, and that's going to greatly depend on the software or game title that you are playing. I like where this is at right now because it offers a lot of good performance consistency whether or not I'm playing games or editing video. Moving forward, all of in-game testing today will be using the maximum fan curve. Alright, Apex Legends, the new Battle Royale game. Took 1 week to get 25 million unique players playing this one heck of a game. Ultra settings averaging 85 FPS. Now the tryhard in me wants to go ahead and tweak the settings, and doing so now I am able to average 110 to 135 FPS. And that's kind of the beauty of PC gaming, is we are granted the ability to do that, and a laptop like this does have the chops to give you that level of performance should you desire it. Balancing thermal and power performance inside of a thin and light chassis featuring this type of hardware spec can be very difficult. So Gigabyte has taken the Intel 100 degrees Celsius spec for the CPU and has lowered that down to 90. This does a really good job of keeping the CPU at bay thermally. They did this on last generation as well. That means the maximum temperature that I ever saw on this thing over 4 weeks was 94 degrees Celsius, but typically the CPU under a gaming load for hours would run into the mid to upper 80s. Now the GPU will thermal throttle at 87 degrees Celsius, so make sure you are running the maximum fan curve to keep that at bay. Battlefield 5 DX11 Ultra. On the smaller maps, you're going to average around 80 FPS, maybe a little bit below that. On the bigger maps, you're going to average around 100 FPS. Pretty strong right now. Now, Battlefield 5 using DX12 and ray tracing, however, you're going to be lucky to average around 55 FPS. They've come a long way with a few driver updates, but ray tracing is just far too taxing, in my opinion, to be worth your while. But it is a really neat display of technology, and I highly encourage you to at least get a taste of it should you have Battlefield 5 on hand. Anthem. High settings, 65 FPS. Now you'll notice the GPU frequency here is a little bit lower. That's because this game is super GPU bound, and you can really see what kind of frequency to expect out of a 2070 Max-Q when the graphics card is very well pushed. Crackdown 3, high settings in the city, averaging around 90 FPS. This is a very unique game, and it offers an amazing overlay. Should you desire ticking that box, it's really neat. I highly recommend it, and for Game Pass, it's worth downloading and trying out. Now the DX12 Ray Tracing Port Royale benchmark, the 2070 Max-Q, no tweaking, scored 3382, and Firestrike scored 16,330. What about overclocking the GPU? Now keep in mind, as I said before, we are power limit throttled on that 2070 Max-Q, and that is normal. So if you were to try to go ahead and overclock the GPU, while MSI Afterburner may accept that overclock, and while the game itself reveals that yes, you are running at a higher frequency, as you can see here, the frame rate does not change. Over on the left-hand side, we have Battlefield 5 running the factory clock speed, and on the right-hand side, we have the overclock applied, and the frame rate is the same. You can get some fluctuations on various benchmarks, but in gaming, I assure you, overclocking the GPU is absolutely pointless, and once again, 2070 Max-Q is power limiting itself, it's doing its job. Now I want to make a case for the i9. You see, my video editing software does not leverage GPU acceleration. That means the CPU has to do all of the rendering work, which also means the CPU gets to use that whole entire heatsink to itself. Now the minimum frequency here was around 3.7. Temperatures were in the mid-80s, and this is on the automatic fan curve. The laptop was barely audible. Should you desire maxing out the fans, it was the same render with a 10 degrees Celsius lower temperature. Now this was not an easy render. All the footage that I'm rendering here in this nearly 20-minute long video was all 4K, and I'm rendering it with a pretty nice high setting. It's demanding quite a bit out of this machine, and this render itself was going to take around 20 to 25 minutes to complete. By no means was this an easy task for the CPU, and for a content creator like myself, the small price to pay to get the i9 upgrade on this Aero is a very justifiable thing for someone like me, so please consider that before making a purchase for yourself. Fan acoustics on the Aero were remarkable. Idling right around 28 to 31 decibels, the automatic fan curve would take the decibels up to around 47, and the maximum fan curve 53 dB. Now let's have a listen to the Nahimic audio and wrap this up. So everything that you just listened to and watched there is why I feel like the Aero is one of the best laptops for its form factor. It has all the port selection that I could possibly need. It allows me to use this external NVMe enclosure to transfer 15 gigs worth of files off that onto my editing rig in under a minute. It has enough battery life to where I could edit video or watch content while flying all the way across the United States. It does not have this finger melting experience when I'm typing. I had no blue screens. Everything is just flawlessly up to date. And the best part about it is, if I recall correctly, all of the other chassis out there that feature what this thing is featuring all come in at a higher price point. Google search that, okay? All of the other companies, I'm not going to name them, that are offering what this thing offers tend to fall short per its spec. While they might be able to match the price, it ends up having a quarter or half of the storage. There's always that one or two things that are lacking in that compared to the Aero. This thing is very competitively priced in that small form factor segment. Look it up for yourself. Alright, that's going to do it for now. Gigabyte watches and reads the comments, so if you have any constructive criticism for there, any feedback, I would appreciate it, as I think they would too. Hopefully you enjoyed this review, and I'm Bob Vault Trades. Peace out.